The hangar at CFB Trenton was silent for a moment. Then Mark Carney's voice cut through the air like steel on ice. Decades of quiet dependence, of assuming the United States would always be Canada's shield, were swept aside in a single speech. The Prime Minister-designate didn't just talk about defense, he declared an end to an era. Standing in front of uniformed soldiers, Carney made it clear, Canada will no longer tether its fate to Washington's moods. In a world where the Arctic melts, missiles fly faster than diplomacy, and tariffs land like punches, Canada is stepping out from under America's shadow and building a fortress of its own. The spark came just days earlier. On August 1st, President Donald Trump announced a 35% tariff on Canadian goods, a broadside aimed at steel, aluminium, and critical minerals. These weren't niche products. They were the backbone of Canada's heavy industry, the lifeblood of its manufacturing exports, and critical to its defense supply chains. Trump framed it as America First, protecting U.S. workers from what he called unfair competition and safeguarding national security. But for Canada, it was more than an economic hit. It was a wake-up call. If Washington could turn its most reliable neighbor into a target overnight, then the foundation of the Canada-U.S. partnership was shakier than anyone wanted to admit. Mark Carney's response was calculated, a deliberate redirection of Canada's future. Speaking at CFB Trenton, he laid out a defense strategy that flips economic punishment into military opportunity. The very resources hit by Trump's 35% tariffs, steel, aluminium, and critical minerals, will no longer flow south to feed America's industries. Instead, they will reinforce Canada's own armed forces and supply a newly formalized security partnership with the European Union. This EU-Canada security and defense partnership opens Canadian industry to Europe's massive Rearm Europe initiative, securing contracts that will see Canadian-built warships, aircraft, and armored vehicles serving both at home and across NATO. In return, European defense suppliers will strengthen Canada's own capabilities, from advanced cyber systems to modernized maritime fleets. Central to this plan is a new defense procurement agency, designed to slash bureaucratic delays and ensure that equipment reaches the field when it's needed most. Aging submarines, grounded aircraft, and outdated land vehicles will be replaced through an industrial revitalization effort that keeps production and jobs firmly in Canadian hands. The financial commitment is equally bold, $9 billion this year alone, achieving NATO's 2% GDP target 5 years ahead of schedule, with an ambition to reach 5% by 2035. It's an investment that will quadruple Canada's defense spending within a decade. Trump's tariffs were meant to weaken Canada's economic footing. Carney has turned them into a launch pad, transforming a trade strike into a long-term security advantage and signaling that Canada's defense will be forged at home, on its own terms. The tariffs may hit U.S. industries harder than Washington admits. Many American defense contractors rely on Canadian metals and minerals for parts, vehicles, and aerospace manufacturing. Ports along the Great Lakes, already strained by shifting trade patterns, could see traffic slow as Canadian exports are rerouted to European buyers. And with Canada diverting its supply to NATO allies, U.S. procurement costs are likely to rise. For Canada, the shift is seismic. It's not just about avoiding U.S. tariffs, it's about building a self-sustaining defense economy. By supplying Europe, Ottawa gains long-term contracts, shared R&D, and access to cutting-edge military tech outside the U.S. export control system. Domestically, it means jobs in steel mills, shipyards, tech labs, and cyber command centers, all insulated from Washington's political storms. The ripple effects extend far beyond North America. As Canada deepens ties with Europe, It chips away at the U.S. monopoly on Western defense procurement. In an era of de-dollarization, where countries are signing arms and energy deals in euros, yuan, and rubles, this realignment feeds into a slow but visible redraw of the global trade map. The symbolism is potent, a founding NATO member shifting some of its strategic bets away from Washington. Seen from a wider lens, Carney's pivot is a chapter in a much larger transformation of the global order. The post-Cold War era, when the United States stood as the unchallenged anchor of Western security, is coming apart at the seams. Russia's war in Ukraine has shattered illusions about European dependence on U.S. defense. China's rising assertiveness from the South China Sea to the Arctic is driving Asia-Pacific nations to form new security pacts. And Washington's own unpredictability, tariffs one week, troop withdrawals the next, is convincing allies that trust alone is no longer a strategy. For Canada, diversifying alliances isn't an option. It's survival. Carney's world is one where the Arctic is open water, patrolled by Chinese icebreakers and shadowed by Russian submarines, where European defense ministers meet in Brussels to sign pacts, while the U.S. haggles over commitments, where billion-dollar contracts are drafted not only in English, but in Mandarin, French, and German. The message is clear. America is not being forced out of its role. It is drifting, distracted, transactional, and unreliable. And Canada, with its vast territory and strategic resources, cannot afford to be tethered to that drift. It must set its own course before someone else charts it for them. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a turning point. From the cold floors of CFB Trenton, Carney signaled that Canada's days of treating security as an American gift are over. The new playbook is self-reliance backed by alliances that share risk, not just rhetoric. In the end, history might remember August 2025, not for Trump's tariffs, but for the moment Canada quietly rewrote its place in the world. America wasn't pushed out. It was quietly replaced. Is this how superpowers fade? Through silence, not shock? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe. This story isn't over yet.